I'm Howard Lovey of the Alliance of Independent Authors and book editor at howardlovey.com, and you're listening to Inspirational Indie Authors. Every episode, I interview an Ally member to find out what inspires them and how they are an inspiration to other authors. My guest this episode is Jonathan Posner, an indie author who writes historical action adventures set in the Tudor period. After years of self-publishing, he used what he learned to build his own imprint, which has grown into a publishing company that guides new authors through the indie process. His goal is to give writers the support he wished he had when he started. I'll let Jonathan Posner tell his story.
So hi, I'm Jonathan Posner. I'm the author of 7 action-adventure novels set in the 16th century. I'm self-published. I self-published all my books under an imprint that I created called Winter and Drew Publishing, and it was named for Bill Winter, who taught me history, and Stephen Drew, who taught me English. So that I thought was a fitting tribute to my teachers back in my school days. A couple of years ago, what I realized was that the amount of self-publishing knowledge that I'd built up meant that I could actually offer it to help other authors, those who are looking for someone to support and to guide them through the process. So what I decided to do was to turn Winter and Drew into an actual publishing company, offering authors all the benefits of being self-published, but with the added benefit of having a credible publisher logo on the back of their books. So it sort of, I think, gives them the best of both worlds. And we've published several books and a few more in the pipeline.
That's great. So you're an author and you help other authors too. Well, we'll get to that. Let's go back in time a little bit and talk about your early life. Tell me where you grew up, and was reading and writing always a part of your life?
Absolutely. So I grew up in Essex, which is on the other side of the country from where I now live. It's the east side of the country. And I was absolutely one of those children who had his nose in a book all times. 24/7 if I could. Just devoured books all the time. And I absolutely loved the action-adventure genre. I just loved the sort of the excitement and the what's happened next sort of page-turning element to it. So I was always buried in Dick Francis, in Harry Flashman, all sorts of action novels. And I was also really interested in musicals. So when I started writing, what I actually started writing was a musical. And I've written now 3 musicals. I've written the book and the lyrics to 3 musicals. But yes, there's not a but actually. And they have all been produced at some point or other. When I decided to write a novel, I took the story of one of my first musicals and I turned it into the novel that the novel that the musical could have come from, if you're with me. I sort of did it slightly the wrong way around.
Yeah.
And what I decided to do was to sort of really try and build the story and make the story real. And what I discovered was that when you write a novel, it's a very different process from writing a musical. To a certain extent, the musical genre is much more forgiving. If there's a hole in the plot, you can fill it with a song.
Just sing. Yes, that's right.
Yeah, just a bit of jazz hands and everyone moves on and everything's fine. What I discovered, of course, is that simply doesn't work for a book. The book has to hang together. The plot has to be very tight, no holes at all. So although they both started from the same premise, they take it in a different direction. And that was the first book I wrote.
Interesting. Yeah, that's. I wrote a novel that came out earlier this year that involves music. And I tried my hand at writing song lyrics. I didn't even write the music to it. That's up to the imagination. But it's a different process to write lyrics. Absolutely. Use a different a different part of your brain. But let's go back in time still a little more. So what did you study, or did you go to college? And what did you do for a career?
I studied law and sociology at Exeter University. So I've actually come full circle. I now live in the university town I was educated in. And I decided that the law wasn't for me because I was too creative. I just couldn't remember all those cases you have to remember. So I just kept making them up. So not surprisingly, I had to resit one exam twice. I think, resit twice. Finally passed it on the 3rd go and finished my degree. But I knew that I wasn't cut out for the law and I didn't particularly want a career in sociology. So I decided that marketing was going to be my thing. And I had a career working in marketing agencies, mainly working across all sorts of different brands. I spent 5 years working on Kellogg's, creating the promotions that go on the back of the Kellogg's packets.
Oh, that's great. Kellogg is based in my home state of Michigan too.
Absolutely. It wasn't that I wasn't the creative one. I was the commercial one, but all part of the same process. And I built my marketing career to the point where I actually formed my own marketing agency and ran that for 6 years. And then I've been in all sorts of other agencies when the needs must. And I really just enjoyed the whole sort of marketing process and particularly got into animal health. So I was for about 20 years almost exclusively on animal health brands. So if you want to know anything about fleas on cats or reproduction in pigs or coughs in calves, I'm your man. I can tell you all about those.
Well, I do have an elderly dog who has arthritis, and we're trying many different things. Maybe I'll ask you after the show.
Strong recommendation for that one.
Okay. So all the while you were in marketing, did you also secretly long to write about the Tudor-Era?
Absolutely. So writing was my release from being commercial during the day and not allowed to be creative, because every creative director I worked with was very clear that was their job, not mine. So the writing was my sort of creative retreat, my outlet for my own creativity. And so following on from the 3 musicals, I then, as I say, I wrote a novel. I also wrote a play, but that wasn't very good. And I wrote that novel. And then from there, I just kept going. So it's roughly speaking 1 novel a year for about the last 10 years, give or take.
What particularly about the Tudor period was interesting to you? I mean, I know there's sex, there's violence, there's, family drama. Is that all kind of part of the mix?
Well, the reason that the Tudor period really appealed to me came from a book, actually. I read a book called Legacy by Susan Kay, and I can heartily recommend it. This is a plug. Susan Kay, Legacy, very good book. I must have, actually, my copy is almost completely falling apart. I must have read it so many times. And it's a biopic of Elizabeth I, pretty much from birth to death. And the way she's written it, the way she brought the whole Tudor period to life just really, really caught my imagination. So when I was looking to set initially the musical, I was looking to set the musical in a historic period. I wanted a period that somebody would time travel back to, would be interesting and would be a high level of jeopardy in terms of, saying the wrong thing or not understanding how society worked. And so the Tudor period really appealed to me, and particularly because my main character is accused of being a witch. And to be accused of being a witch, you could either set it in the early 1600s, when people like Hopkins was doing his witch hunting, or, and this was much more interesting for me, you can go earlier in history and you can set it in the Tudor period when not everybody believed in witchcraft, or if they did, a lot of people thought it was benign. They thought it was simply healing. So you would then have people who are on her side. And if I'd set it in the 1630s, 40s, or 1620s, 30s, nobody would have been on her side. She would have been, she would have been accused of being a witch and hung within minutes.
Yeah.
So
end of story.
An end of story. So I really needed some means of having people who might say, no, that's, that I have no problem with witchcraft. If you're accused of that, then I don't think you have anything. I'm on your side. And that gave me the chance to bring a much more rounded set of characters in that gave her help and the ability to sort of get on in the society. And given that I've given her 3 books, she does get on in the society.
So, yeah, you write strong female characters and, women who kind of challenge the constraints of the time. Why is that important to you, to center your stories around these young, independent, strong female protagonists?
There's a very good reason for that, which it came out of a conversation I was talking to somebody not long ago, actually, and it sort of crystallized the thought in my mind as to why I've done that. And actually, the reason is because when I was at school, I was at a boarding school, and with the best will in my world, I think my father was actually trying to do the best thing for me. he was trying to send me to, the best school he could afford. But it wasn't actually the right school for me. And I felt like an outsider the whole time I was there. And so when it came to writing stories, I wanted to bring in that experience. And as I say, I think to a certain extent, a lot of this has come from, periods of self-reflection and discussion in my later life. But I wanted to make sure that I was talking about people who are outsiders. And the Tudor period was very, very patriarchal. Women were property. Women couldn't do anything without a man's permission. It was not a happy time to be a woman and particularly on your own. So when I sent a character back into Tudor England through time travel, she would have been not just an outsider because she was from the modern era, but she would have been an outsider because she was a woman. And that, I think, was very interesting because it gives you such a strong dynamic for the story that maybe a man just wouldn't have had. So that for me was, as I say, it was something that maybe I've come to in later life to come to understand. At the time, I just thought, this is a fun story. I'm going to write it with a woman, as the main character. But now looking back on it, I think that's the reason why.
Yeah, outsiders and how they navigate those kinds of challenges. Now, about the time travel part of it, do you go into a lot of science fiction-y explanation, or do you go into, well, it happened and here's what happened next?
Pretty much the latter. I took the view that if you're going to have time travel, you've just got to make it as quick and as easy as possible. I didn't give her a DeLorean or any sort of mechanical means of traveling back. I just had it that she works in one of these Tudor-era stately homes in the modern day. There's an electrical storm and the whole house goes back 450 years around her. So when the door opens and the guy strides in his doublet and hose, he really is Tudor. And of course, she does what we'd all do. She says the wrong thing to the wrong person and gets accused of being a witch. And that's really where that's the inciting part of the story. And that's where it takes off. I just wanted to make it as simple as I say as possible. And also I took it that it's a one-way trip. So I didn't want to have her, to start with, she wants to work out how she can get back again, but she fairly soon realizes she's not going back. That was a one-way trip. So that puts a very different spin on the story for her. And from her character perspective, she has to come to terms with the fact she's stuck. She ain't going anywhere. She's got to navigate this Tudor world and become part of it. And that's a challenge for her.
Now, how do you handle the storytelling and history aspect? Do you start with the historical events and sort of reverse engineer the fiction around them, or do your characters drive the plot first?
My characters essentially drive the plot, but what I've tried to do was to weave history in. So in the second book, she discovers a plot to kill Queen Elizabeth, and she decides that she's going to stop it. And so that brings in Elizabeth, and it brings in, some the characters around the Earl of Leicester, the characters around Elizabeth. Most of my characters are made up, are fictional characters, but I've tried to weave in the occasional real people. And then in the third book, she comes to the attention of Francis Walsingham. And he was Elizabeth's spy master, again, a real person. And he realizes once he's got past the whole time travel thing, and no, it isn't magic, he decides that somebody who knows the future could actually be very useful to him. So when she tells him all the things that are going to happen, he says, well, we've got to try and stop that, and sends her off on an incredibly dangerous mission, which is intending to change the future or change history, involving Mary, Queen of Scots. So I brought her in, and one or two of the people around her. So that gives me some, I'd call them anchor points. There are points within the story that I know I want to hit, because they're real events. But in between those, I can be completely fictional.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Plus, these real people are long gone, and they can't sue you either. So.
This is very true, and I would love to think that if they did read the book, they might go, no, actually, that could have happened.
Absolutely, that's right. Well, let's switch gears and talk about your method of publishing. We're the Alliance of Independent Authors, and obviously you've had your own indie publishing journey, as they say. What are some of the biggest lessons you learned about the indie publishing process?
Oh gosh, allow the time for it. Don't rush it. There are so many steps that you have to go through. Just creating all of the cover files and so on, the content files to upload is a long process and needs to be done thoroughly and needs to be done properly. I think one of the other things that I've discovered or learned is that one pair of eyes is never enough when it comes to proofing. Yeah. By all means, have a professional proofer, but I now don't allow a book to go out unless I've proofed it as well. And I've always spotted things that, with the best will in the world, the professional proofer has missed. We're all human, we're not going to capture 100%, but between two of us, I think we can get close.
Yeah, the most sinking feeling is waiting until after it's published and then noticing it.
Absolutely. And I learned lots of lessons about, for example, cover design. When I released my first book, when I published my first book, I had a cover design that I thought pleased me and was different. And Howard, immediately I'm saying this, the red flags that are being raised. And I just thought, this is my mark. This is where I present my personality. And then I realized that actually it doesn't sell because people buy the same. They don't buy different. They buy the genre that they like. And when it comes to cover, what they buy is a cover that makes them think this is like all the books I love. So it's just going to be like another one that I'm going to love. And the risk in buying that book is minimized because you already know you're going to love it when you see the cover. Having a cover that's different doesn't achieve that. And that was one of the big lessons I learned. And The Witchfinder as well, the book we've been discussing, has been through 2 or 3 different cover iterations as I've learned as I've gone along. And it's probably due another one now. It's been a couple of years.
That's interesting. Well, part of the appeal of being an indie publisher is you don't necessarily have to follow all the tropes. But you're saying that when it comes to at least a cover design, people want something familiar.
I do. And I think you're right when you say that you don't have to follow the tropes because, if there's a genre that's in the ascendancy at the moment, romantasy or whatever it might be, and a traditional publisher, commercial publisher saying, right, we need to have books within that genre. We need to make sure we're in that space. As an indie author and as an indie author's publisher, you're not tied to the same constrictions. You can say, well, now you write the book you want to write. And if we think it's good, we'll publish it. It might not make the kind of level of sales that, say, a Hodder and Staunton or a Faber and Faber book might make, and that's fair enough. But it's as much about the author expressing themselves creatively, and I think that's very important. So yes, I'm very much into giving the author their creative freedom, but where there is places that they need to be brought into the commercial tropes, if you will, then I'm absolutely hot on that. I won't, I don't want them to go off on a flight of fancy when it comes to the cover. It's got to look like it's a cover that people will buy.
Right. Well, how do you define your own work? Is there a particular genre that you try to stick to?
Yes, absolutely. I mentioned earlier on that I devoured action adventure stories when I was a small boy, and the action adventure genre, which is sort of a genre, is one that I really, really want to make sure I stay in because I love it. I love the fact that you turn the page on every page. You get to the end of a chapter and you think, I have to keep reading because I need to know what's going to happen next. Mm-hmm. So all my books are written with that kind of intent to make sure that you're continually needing to turn the page. Yeah. So the action adventure is the genre, the genre that I feel most comfortable in. But when it comes to what subgenre, it's historical fiction. Now you can argue that action adventure could be a subgenre of historical, or it could be the other way around. I don't really mind whichever way you put it. For me, the reality is it's action adventure, but I love the whole historical thing. So I put them in the 16th century. And my other character, Mary Fox, she started in England, 2 books in England. I've now sent her down to Italy in the latest book. So she's made it as far south as Naples. And in the 4th book, which I'm now writing, she's got back up to Venice. So I'm trying to keep it broad in my historical geography.
Right, right. And there's a long tradition, I guess, starting with Diana. I'm going to mispronounce your last name, Gabaldon, or
Yeah, Gabaldon. Yeah,
yeah, with the whole traveling back in time. But that's more romance than action adventure, maybe.
I agree, and I don't see my books as time travel because the time travel is just simply a device to put my character in that historical setting. She is a fish out of water to start with, but by the sort of middle of the first book, she's pretty much, sorry, I'm giving too much away here. She's pretty much settled in. Mm-hmm. So it's not really a time travel book anymore. And by the second and the third book, she's very much a pillar of the local society and a Tudor woman through and through.
So tell me a little bit more about Winter and Drew Publishing. Are you sort of a hybrid publisher? Are you an advisor along the way? Do you help them from start to finish?
Absolutely. So I would say the closest definition is a hybrid publisher. We allow the author to keep their rights. So what we try and do is create as close as possible the self-publishing experience, but with somebody on your team, somebody who's literally project managing the whole publication and is on your side throughout and advising and guiding throughout the whole process. I have 3 other associate publishers. So between the 4 of us, we can offer a fairly broad service. But basically what we do is that we enable an author who wants to self-publish but doesn't know how to get all of the benefits of self-publishing, plus, as I say, a credible publisher's logo on the back of their book. So essentially what we do is we project manage them. And coming from the advertising industry and the marketing industry, where as a commercial person within that business, my job was to support a client through the creation of a marketing or advertising program. So that's how I work. That is my way of working. And so I'm very comfortable in that space, giving advice, giving help, passing on the knowledge that I've gained and enabling an author who may not know what they were doing, and with the best will in the world, why should they, to avoid costly and time taking up, sorry, that's a very clumsy expression, mistakes, time consuming, thank you, time consuming mistakes. So, I made a lot of mistakes when I was first publishing. And as I say, I did cover that was completely wrong for my book. And I've now learned from that. I've also made other mistakes as I've gone along through each book, but I've learned from each one. And I think I'm getting better. So when it comes to the kind of level of advice that I can give to the authors that I support through the business, then I believe I can give them, good quality advice. And the other associate publishers that I work with, they are also in a similar situation to me. They have all published their own books, and one of them has an MA in creative writing. So between the 4 of us, we've got different skill sets that we can bring to it, but we all understand the publishing business and can support somebody through that business.
Right, right. Well, tell me also about Writing at the Edge and the Thursday Book Club. Is that part of Winter and Drew, or is that your own separate project?
Writing at the Edge is a side project. It's actually the same 4 guys. Basically, it's a side project where what we're doing is helping writers become authors. We're providing the benefit of all the knowledge and skills that we've built up in our careers as writers. We're providing those in the form of seminars, webinars, workshops. At some point, maybe next year, a sort of a book. There's lots of different ways that we can leverage the knowledge and the experience that we have to help authors. So as I say, we go to festivals and we do workshops. We're doing all sorts of online stuff as well. We have a great website. So those are sort of the way that Writing at the Edge works. The Thursday Book Club came about because 17 years ago, I sat next to a bloke who just set up a radio station. And I said, I would love to be on the radio. And he said, oh, well, what do you know about? I said, well, I've written 3 musicals. I think it was 3 at that point. Yeah. And he said, well, if you know about musicals, we don't have anyone doing musicals. You can do a show on that. So this was up in not far from London, a place called Marlow. And I did a show called The Sound of Musicals for 13 years on Marlow FM. And when I moved down to Exeter, I sort of made myself known to the local community radio station here, just called Phonic FM. And they said, yeah, welcome in. You can do a musical show as well. So for 3 years, I was doing the musical show, or I still am. But it got to a point where I thought, do you know what? There isn't a book show on this station. There needs to be a book show. So I went to the guys who headed up and I said, look, can I do a book show? It's 2 hours talking about books. And they went, yeah, by all means, off you go. So I set up the Thursday Book Club. And it's now a month. It's only once a month only. It is once a month. We read a book. So like a good book club, we read a book and we discuss it on air. And we also read out or provide the ability for people or listeners to find out what's going on in the literary world in the area. So we gather news of local authors having launch events with new books coming out, all sorts of events. And it's growing. We're getting a lot more traction on that with a lot more people now providing us with their news. So we have a news section, we have a book review, we do a bit of music. We have a discussion. And what we try and do is and I have guests every month. What we try and do is have a discussion on subjects which are around the way that authors view writing, so that you're bringing listeners into the world of authors, giving them a sort of peek behind the curtain, as it were, from the author's perspective. So that's the first hour. And then the second hour, there's a lady called Kathy Dodd, who she comes in. She actually does the whole show, but she sort of takes over as presenter for the second hour. And she has discussions. She has music. She has, lots of different elements to her hour of the show. So it breaks it up. It's not just me for an hour, 2 hours. It's me for one and then her for the second. And between the two of us, so she does interviews. She does quite a lot of interviews. So between the two of us, I think we provide, hopefully an engaging 2-hour show about books on our local radio station.
Well, that's wonderful that your local station is letting you do that. I don't know what the situation is in the UK, but in the United States, the local newspapers are cutting back on their books, their book section. They're getting rid of them. They're getting rid of book review sections. So it's getting more and more difficult for authors to find someone to review their books, or even talk about literature in general. Oh, well. So what's next for you? You've got your historical series, you've got your business. What are you focusing on?
Well, I'm trying to keep the two going. So I've got the business has got a book coming out on Friday, is being launched officially on Friday. And it's a memoir from a lady who's now in her 80s and has been an artist all her life. So the way the book is constructed, each chapter is headed up by a piece of her art or a photograph or a memento of some sort. And then she's sort of built the chapter on the memory that flows out from that piece. And there's still an overall overarching narrative arc to the whole story. So that's launching on Friday. And we're having a launch event at an arts gallery in near the town where she lives. And so that's the big one coming up. I've got another project on myself with another memoir, and I've got a cozy crime that we're just sort of in the process of looking at how we're going to publish. So there's a number of different elements coming up. On the writing side, I am writing book number 8. And as I say, I've sent my heroine, Mary Fox, who's a very gung-ho, swashbuckling, almost sort of Jack Reacher character. She rides into town, she helps people out, and she rides off again. And she's currently in Venice, and she's searching for an assassin who she has reason to wish revenge on. I shall say no more than that, but he was a real person. I mean, he is based on a real person. His name was Scoron Concolo, and she's searching for him because she needs to have revenge.
Sounds great. Well, you're kind of, I said before the show that you're the poster child for indie publishing, because it's not just about the books for you, but it's about mentoring others. It's about building a career. What advice would you give aspiring indie publishers who want to build a creative and sustainable career?
In publishing or in writing?
Well, I guess all of the above.
I would say just do it is probably the most important thing. Write the book. To write a book is an achievement. if you can get through the first draft and know that it's just a first draft and you're still going to do another draft and probably a third one after that, it's it's not a quick process, but do it, because if you don't do it, you never will. And you've just got to apply yourself to it. Think of the book as being almost complete in your mind before you even start. It's there. All you're doing is filling in the blanks.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, is a way to overcome that sort of fear of finishing. And I've seen a lot of people who've said, I've got a book, it's been sitting in my drawer for the last 3 years, and every now and then I take it out and tinker with it. I think that's fear of finishing. I think you've just got to finish it. Sometimes it's not going to be as good as you have it in your head, but it's going to be good enough. And that's the thing to do. And then you have to get an editor. Howard, I'm sure you would agree with me on this one. You absolutely have to have an editor, a professional editor, as a separate one. And I would suggest strongly you have both a structural editor and a line and copy editor. And those two are not necessarily, in fact, almost shouldn't be the same person.
Mm-hmm.
So there are people out there who want to help you make your book as good as it can be. Now, clearly, I'm coming from Winter and Drew. We want to make your book as good as it can be so we can help you to publish it. But, we're not the only publisher who offers this service. There are lots of them. So, choose one, work with them, and publish your book. Just do it. Absolutely just do it. That is my advice.
That sounds like great advice, and one that I should follow as well. Well, thank you, Jonathan. This has been fascinating, and a great look at your life and your career and your writing. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Howard. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jonathan. Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to Inspirational Indie Authors. I'm Howard Lovey, Content and Communications Manager at the Alliance of Independent Authors and book editor at howardlovey.com. If you are a member of Ally and would like to be considered for the show, please write to me at howard@allianceindependentauthors.org and tell me what inspires you and how you can inspire other authors. As always, find more author advice, tips, and tools at our Self-Publishing Advice Center, selfpublishingadvice.org. And if you haven't already, we invite you to join our organization and become a self-publishing ally. You can do that at allianceindependentauthors.org.